Welcome to the 5-Minute Biographies YouTube channel.
Hi guys, thanks for watching the show. Just a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the biographies we have coming along in the future. That being said, let's get on with the show and the 5-Minute Biographies presentation of Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn was born in Belgium on the 4th of May 1929. Her father, Joseph Ruston, had served as a consul to the Dutch East Indies, and so she lived all over her childhood, as his work moved him and his family from one place to another. She took an interest in dance at an early age whilst in Switzerland, and when the family arrived in London in 1948, she began training as a ballerina. Audrey's mother was the Baroness Ella van Heemstra, a Dutch noblewoman, Audrey's father in Batavia in September 1925. Both had been previously married, and as Joseph mistakenly believed himself to be descended from James Hepburn, the third husband of Mary Queen of Scots, he changed his surname to Ruston Hepburn, as he thought the name sounded more aristocratic. Due to her parents' positions, Audrey had a fairly sheltered and privileged upbringing, and due to the amount of moving around that the family did, she was fortunate enough to learn 5 languages, including English and Dutch from her parents, and later some Spanish, French and Italian. Money can't buy happiness, and in 1935 Audrey suffered what she described as the most traumatic event of her life when her father unexpectedly decided to turn his back on his family when he moved to London, where he became deeply involved in the fascist movement. He and Ella were officially divorced in 1938, but Audrey later reconnected with her father in the 1960s after locating him through the Red Cross in Dublin. Sadly, he continued to be emotionally detached, but even so, she supported him financially until his death. At the beginning of the Second World War, Audrey lived with her in Arnhem in the Netherlands, as it was hoped that the Netherlands would remain neutral. However, after the Germans invaded in 1940, she started using a different name, going by Edda van Heemstra, as it was thought that having an English-sounding name could cause problems. The Nazi occupation of Holland was a very difficult time for Audrey and her family. She once said, quote, "Had we known that we were going to be occupied for 5 years, we might have all shot ourselves," unquote. Following the Allied landing on D-Day in June 1944, the daily conditions in Arnhem quickly deteriorated. After the difficulties of occupation, the Dutch were now having to deal with famine, as the Germans blocked the supply routes which stopped food and goods from getting to them. Audrey suffered from malnutrition and as a result developed acute anemia, as well as respiratory problems. As a probable consequence of the suffering she witnessed during the Nazi occupation, Audrey developed a deep sense of compassion, which led to her launching a second career as a humanitarian during the 1950s. She was appointed a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF, for which she went on several overseas missions to places like Ethiopia, Sudan, Honduras, El Salvador and Guatemala. She worked with UNICEF for the rest of her life and went on a mission to Somalia just 4 months before her death. She called what she witnessed there, quote, "apocalyptic," and went on to say, "I walked into a nightmare. I have seen famine in Ethiopia and Bangladesh, but I have seen nothing like this," unquote. Audrey Hepburn's acting career took off after playing the part of a European princess called Anne in 1953's Roman Holiday. She received critical acclaim and won a Golden Globe Award, a British Academy of Film and Television Arts Award, otherwise known, of course, an Academy Award for her performance. Although she won the Academy Award for Roman Holiday, Audrey Hepburn is perhaps best known for her role in 1961's Breakfast at Tiffany's, for which she was also nominated for an Academy Award, although by the time she played the part of Holly Golightly, she had already appeared in a dozen movies and several TV series. Throughout her career, she was nominated 4 more times for an Academy Award and 4 more times for a BAFTA, winning 2 of them for 1960's The Nun's Story and 1965's Charade. Audrey Hepburn is still one of only 15 people to have won Emmy, Tony, Grammy and Academy Awards. Audrey was not only a talented actress, but was also a style icon. She was inducted into the Best Dressed List Hall of Fame in 1961 due to her trend-setting styles. One of her outfits, from Breakfast at Tiffany's, consisted of a gorgeous black satin dress, designed by Hubert de Givenchy, long black satin dress gloves, a diamond necklace, a tiara, and long cigarette holder. This is doubtless her most memorable look from the film, and is probably the picture many have in their minds when they think of her. The Givenchy dress was sold from her personal collection in December 2006 for nearly £500,000, a record for a single item of clothing from a movie wardrobe. Of Givenchy, Hepburn said, quote, "He gave me a look, a kind, a silhouette," unquote. Comfortable and casual clothes in private, and although she did not consider herself beautiful, she said, quote, "My look is attainable. Women can look like Audrey Hepburn by flipping out their hair, buying the large glasses, and the little sleeveless dresses," unquote. As far as relationships are concerned, Audrey Hepburn was nearly married to James Hansen in 1952, but called it off at the last minute. 2 years later, in September 1954, she married actor Mel Ferrer. She was keen to have children but suffered 2 miscarriages, one of her falling from a horse whilst filming The Unforgiven, before going on to have her first son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer, on the 17th of July 1960. She suffered 2 more miscarriages in 1965 and 1967. After 14 years of marriage, Hepburn and Ferrer divorced in 1968. Her second marriage was to Andrea Dotti, whom she had met on a cruise in the Mediterranean in the same year her divorce came through. They were married in January the following year, with Audrey's second son Luca being born on the 8th of February 1970. She would have more children, but in 1974 she suffered another miscarriage. The couple's relationship was dissolved in 1982. Although she would have no more children, from 1980 until she died in 1993, Audrey Hepburn was in a relationship with a Dutch actor called Robert Wolders. They were never married, but she described her time with him as the happiest of her life. From 1967 onwards, Hepburn spent most of her time either with her family or on humanitarian missions. Her movie career took a back seat, and she played only occasional parts, including that of alongside Sean Connery's Robin Hood in 1976's Robin and Marion. Her last starring role in a movie was in 1981's They All Laughed, which only received a limited release, due to it being overshadowed by the murder of Dorothy Stratton, one of its stars. Hepburn's entertainment-related project was a spoken word album for children, called Audrey Hepburn's Enchanted Tales, which was recorded in 1992 and which earned her a posthumous Grammy Award. Later in 1992, after returning to Switzerland from a humanitarian trip to Somalia, she started having abdominal pain, which, following tests that were undertaken in Switzerland which were initially inconclusive, was found to be due to a rare abdominal cancer. She had surgery at Cedars Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles and commenced a course of chemotherapy, after Audrey and her family returned home to Switzerland to celebrate Christmas, a journey which was made possible with the help of her friend Hubert de Givenchy, who arranged a private jet for her, as she wasn't well enough to travel on a commercial flight. Back in Switzerland, she received hospice care at her home and was enough to take walks in her garden, but as the first month of 1993 progressed, she was confined more and more to bed, until on the evening of the 20th of January 1993, Audrey Hepburn died at her home in her sleep. She was 63 years old. Her children have honoured her since her death, with Sean Ferrer founding the Audrey Hepburn Children's Fund, and the US Fund for UNICEF also founding the Audrey Hepburn Society with Luca Dotti as chair. In 2002, UNICEF honoured her humanitarian work with a statue called the Spirit of Audrey, which is located at its headquarters in New York. The American Film Institute named her third on a list of the greatest female stars of all time. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and her image continues to be used worldwide for advertising campaigns. In 2004, following polls conducted by FD, Audrey Hepburn was named the most beautiful woman of all time and most beautiful woman of the 20th century, respectively. I hope you enjoyed that episode of 5 Minute Biographies. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for plenty more biographies to come.